Hi everyone. By the end of this class, you'll learn how to make indirect requests. We will focus on turning statements into indirect requests. Now, let's discuss what indirect requests are. So, indirect requests means that you want to give a message to someone who is not present or not available. Let's say, for example, you call a person and the person is not there, and you leave a message for that person. Well, this is what we call an indirect request. So let me present some structure. If you see the chart on the screen, we can see how this structure changes depending on the type of sentence. So if we have statements, imperatives, yes and no questions, and WH questions, those will be different whenever we change them to indirect request. Now I'll be discussing this individually, and then we're going to try to make sense of all of them together. The idea is to be able to make to take any kind of sentence and then change that to a form of indirect request. So in this particular lesson, we're going to focus with the first one, with statements. So as we can see, statements are quite easy to change, right? We have a statement there, Tony's having a party. So that statement, we change it to an indirect request. You call maybe Jeff the assistant, and you want to give a message to him because he was not available, and then um, you tell the assistant, could you tell Jeff that Tony is having a party? All right, so it's quite easy, right? We just kind of like introduce could you tell, and here we're gonna introduce the person who that message is for. So remember that what you're doing is you're leaving a message with Jeff's assistant, and then Jeff's assistant will then give that message to him. So it's quite simple, right? So what we want to do is we want to leave quite a few messages for Jeff, and then we want to practice changing those statements into indirect requests. In this case, we're going to practice changing those statements to indirect requests introduced by that. So the first one that we can see there is, okay, Jeff, Tony is having a party. That's the message. So how would I give the message to the receptionist or to his assistant? Um, could you tell Jeff that Tony is having a party? By the way, the reason you see that in parentheses is because that is optional. That means that you can either say, could you tell Jeff Tony is having a party? Or you could just include it. You could say, could you tell Jeff that Tony is having a party? So let's write a couple of other uh, statements, if you will. All right, and these are messages that I want to give to Jeff's receptionist, right? I'll change the size a little bit so that you can see that pretty clear. So how do we change this next statement? Jeff, Tony is going to invite everyone from work. All right, so once again, we want to deliver the message. We want to leave the message with the receptionist. So could you tell Jeff that Tony is gonna invite everyone from work? So basically, the only thing that we did is, if you see, this is the message, right? And what we did is we just pretty much sort of like have the same thing. We only added, and I'm going to highlight that in red. We only added, could you tell Jeff that, right? Because the message is for Jeff once again, right? Could you tell Jeff that Tony is going to invite everyone from work? Now highlight that in yellow so you can see. So this was the only thing that we added, and we're going to do the same thing for other kind of statements. And so let's play around with other kinds of statements real quick. Let's see, something related to a party, right? And we want to give the message to Jeff. All right. Okay, so let me change the size a little bit. So, Jeff, Tony is gonna have a lot of food and drinks at the party. So how can we change this to an indirect request or an indirect message? Well, first of all, I mentioned that at this point, because everything is directed towards Jeff, we want to say, could you tell Jeff that? And we're simply going to copy this, as you can see. right? And by the way, something that I forgot to do was I just forgot to add this question mark here, right? Okay, there we go. So it's quite simple as you can see, right? Let's do one more. Um, what's the message? Well, I want to also give another message to Jeff, and this message is gonna be, all right, Tony is gonna have a DJ who is gonna play all kinds of music, right? So once again, what is it that we want to do? Well, quite simple. We're gonna just borrow this. Could you tell Jeff that? All right. And we're simply going to just the message. We don't change much on the message at this point, right? It's pretty much the same thing. So could you tell Jeff that Tony is gonna have a DJ who's gonna play all kinds of music, right? That's the message that I want to give to Jeff.